Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. This week, we're going to talk about President Trump's tariff threats and India's reaction to it. Can we really change things as people say we should? Or are there serious roadblocks? I believe there are four fixes that India needs for Viksit Bharat to be a reality. So let's look at them. Let's start with the fact that President Trump has threatened a 50% tariff threat on some of India's exports. And this has sent Indian markets as well as our policymakers into a tizzy. Everybody from business leaders to economists have offered suggestions on what needs to be done. I'm one of them. Is it a wake-up call? Sure it is. There is no doubt that India must act decisively or risk losing ground in the global economy. Some of the opinions worth looking at: former Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant, who said that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for reform. Mahindra Group Chairman Anand Mahindra says that we should use the global churn as an opportunity to extract Amrit from the adversity through bold reform. Suggestions include radical improvements in ease of doing business, fully functional single window clearance system for investment proposals, lower levies to make exports globally competitive, and accelerated reform to increase tourist inflows. All very good ideas. The Prime Minister obviously listened, and on 15th August, in a long 103-minute speech, he talked about his vision for Viksit Bharat, which has now been pushed to 2047. He also outlined in detail what his government had done over the last 11 years to reduce compliance requirements, make things online, and he then announced task force to review laws and policies. In fact, he also promised massive job creation, 35 million jobs in 2 years, and long overdue steps, much to everybody's relief, to reduce the goods and services tax on everyday products that we use. Also promised faceless centralized assessments and adjudication, etc. All of this is wonderful. But you know India. There's always been a yawning gap between the vision outlined by various prime ministers and leaders and its actual execution. Nothing seems to change, or rather, changes so slowly that we are losing out because of the slow pace. We have not become a developed country when many smaller countries around us have raced ahead. The reason, I think, is because politicians and mainly bureaucrats who dream up all these laws refuse to understand the pain points of businessmen and citizens alike, even when evidence is staring them in the face. And look at what is happening. Mass consumption is slowing down due to lower real incomes. Wage growth lags inflation. Demand for even everyday personal care products like soap and toothpaste has weakened, and it's affecting fast-moving consumer product companies. And wealth inequality has widened. The richest 1% hold 40% of India's national wealth. The Gini coefficient is rising. Energy dependence, uneven progress in pharmaceutical research and development, and yet unrealized defense manufacturing goals show that translating vision and ideas into tangible outcomes are two different things. What really affects all of us, whether you're a businessman or a citizen, it is the cumulative burden of taxes, cess, tolls, over and above our income tax, rising costs that we struggle to deal with, medical emergencies, and stuff like that. We are unable to cope. While we're paying more and more, our quality of life seems to be going down, as evidenced from crumbling infrastructure, bad roads, lack of pavements. All of us complain about this every day. While on the job front, one of the biggest sunrise sectors, which is employing so many people, seems to have turned stagnant. The software industry is laying off people after years of entry-level salaries having remained the same. But the bigger problem, to my mind, lies elsewhere. India needs drastic action to strengthen its institutions, sure. But more than that, it needs to reduce regulatory friction, arbitrary enforcement action, judicial bottlenecks, and above all, tackle public and private sector corruption, which has become a way of life. 4 areas that you need to deal with, and here's what they are. First, the compliance burden. It has made life difficult. You talk about ease of doing business, you manage the ranks. We have jumped from 142 in 2014 to 63 in 2020. But does life seem easier to most people who are in business? Well, ask any startup or MSME, micro, small, medium enterprise, which contribute 30% of India's gross domestic product and are the biggest employers. They are suffocating under increased regulatory burdens. And this is not me saying. A recent report by Team Lee's RegTech says that a typical manufacturing MSME with a single unit in one state is subject to a staggering 1,450 compliance obligations annually. This cuts across 7 categories of law. It also includes 59 types of inspectors who can come and ask you questions, 48 registers that are needed to be maintained, and 486 clauses that have imprisonment as a penalty, which means that doing business almost seems like a crime. Go a little here and there, either you pay up, which is one of the things I'm coming to, or you can land in jail. This is a ridiculous way of running the country. And all this comes at a cost. Compliances are not online where everyone can sit down and hammer things away on a computer. It costs between 13 to 17 lakhs per annum for these small enterprises, which is a big strain because none of them can afford in-house expertise like having legal experts and tax experts and people who understand all the new changes in online systems that are being unleashed every few days with deadlines and penalties to back everything. Doesn't even spare not-for-profit organizations and social enterprises. They too are reeling under the burden of compliance, comes at a huge cost because everything needs to be certified and constantly renewed. And it's made worse by the fact that the reporting machinery, which is supposed to take care of all this, remains archaic and unaccountable. These are people who, without a profit, are trying to help society. Their life is also made difficult. Now let's come to something else, which is the enforcement overreach. Why is life difficult? Because you're living in fear of coercive action by investigation and enforcement agencies of the government. This is what together we call the friction tax. It is imposed by a combination. Now, what happens in India is that enforcement overreach happens in this way, and it's been going on for a while. One agency finds some wrongdoing, everybody else gets into investigating it, and they start a joint multi-agency action, which includes freezing of bank accounts, raids, joint investigations, and arrests even before a proper indictment. All this has been normalized. Innumerable credible reports also of regulatory agencies. There's so many of them that have been set up, each of them with their own bureaucracy, their own compliances, their own costs and laws, and their own corruption. So people demand money in order to avoid harsh orders and regulatory damage. Most people pay up, and the few cases that have stood up are actually proving what's going on behind the scenes because they get thrown out at the appellate or the Supreme Court or the High Court level. And they are the ones that show how flimsy and contrived cases, there are many in insider trading that are knocked out on appeal, but not before imposing serious legal costs and not to mention reputational damage, because the whole process takes a minimum of 3 to 4 years or more. Now, proliferation of multiple agency enforcement action is often based on a lack of understanding of what business needs and a creative interpretation of the new laws that are imposed all the time. This adds another layer of risk. Single complaint, like I said, can trigger multiple investigations. It would be called the gunboat approach to enforcement. All of them coming at you to see how they can trip you up. This is worsened by new legislation such as the Digital Competition Bill. Each time people point to things before they become law, when they're under discussion, the government's reaction is to look at all of this as criticism and to react defensively. They push ahead with it, saying everything is fine, people are critical for no reason, until there is so much pain that there's a public outcry on social media, and then it's either reversed or it's tinkered with, always too little and too late, adding to the absolute nightmare of doing business. I would call it a shoot first approach. It hasn't even spared startups, all of them funded by risk taking angel investors, many of them foreign investors. So, this is money coming into the country to support your business, create money in your country, to create employment in your country and economic benefits. In one high profile case, I know I'm going back to 2019, but the accounts of a food delivery platform called Travel Khana were frozen, forcing the company to pay 36 lakh tax demand. And how? The accounts were frozen, and the tax officials made the bank issue demand drafts. And apparently, this was happening regularly during the angel tax enforcement action. Another case, the founder of School Dairy received a notice even as he was sitting in a discussion about angel tax. It led to such outrage and a hashtag called Shut Down India that the government began to tinker. Now, mind you, this hasn't happened only during the NDA or the BJP government. The angel tax went back to 2012, the UPA and Congress. It was finally abolished in 2024 after a series of complaints. That's what we do. We don't fix a problem. We tinker with it because we're still trying to extract what we can with a tax, because we won't give up on any taxes. And this brings me to GST. Government is giving up a lot of stuff. It will be collected from somewhere else, and we're going to watch out for it. In fact, entrepreneurs frequently recount instances of harassment and threats from officials who are under pressure for collection targets. This is tax terrorism. It discourages businesses from formalizing themselves at a cost to themselves. It's not all cash and they're happy and they're keeping it in cupboards. They sacrifice their own growth and access to formal credit. Now, the next bugbear, which is corruption. It is the single biggest disease affecting India and the largest block to ease of doing business. It's higher and more extortive with government agencies, but equally so in the private sector, as is illustrated by the fact that PwC's Global Economic Crime Survey 2024 showed that 59% of Indian organizations faced economic fraud in 2 years. This usually happens from your own employees or people you deal with. 2024 Local Circles survey found 66% of businesses had paid bribes in the past year. Many of them were compelled to do so to get their work done and for timely processing. Happens to us as individuals as well. Any of you, and most of you would have rented or bought property, you know how it works. Automation has only increased the efficiency and volume of graft, but if you don't want to spend hours and hours waiting for things, you would simply pay up. And everybody across the country knows this. There is no attempt to deal with it. Those posts are auctioned. From local officials to high-level administrators, corruption drains resources, misallocates funds, and undermines public service delivery. We were told that Aadhaar, digitization, everything going online was going to eliminate the massive leakage in delivery of social benefits and subsidies, right? We kept quoting Rajiv Gandhi saying 10 paisa out of 1 rupee actually reaches beneficiaries, and all this was going to change. Now we know there are huge number of scams enabled by the fact that you have Aadhaar and digitization, because you create ghost beneficiaries. This has happened in Manrega, rural health programs, scholarship programs. Whistleblowers are being killed, and there's massive allegations of political involvement in many, many states. This shows that technology can enable 100% leakage, forget about the 10%, and it can keep people out of the system and without a solution. Those of you who read Moneylife regularly would know that we have highlighted issues that happen in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, where people are struggling to get basic benefits offered by the state, and they're all below the poverty line. Now, I'm sure the answer to this will be that India's shadow economy or black money has shrunk. Yes, it has, to 20% of GDP, but that also is pretty high, and it will remain at that, causing problems because Systemic loopholes and backdoors are deliberately built into the best systems to allow discretion to government officials and parking of illicit funds. This is unlikely to change until election funding remains non-transparent and is fed by business and industry in exchange for dubious benefits. You give something under the table, you are extracting something that's not legal, right? Finally, all of this would not have mattered if the judiciary functioned the way it would, contracts were enforced, and things got resolved or wrongdoing got penalized. Doesn't happen. The glacial pace of justice is such a major bottleneck for India's development. Civil disputes, including contract enforcement cases, can drag on for decades. Domestic as well as foreign investments struggle with this. In fact, India ranks 163rd out of 190 where contract enforcement is concerned. It's a matter of severe embarrassment. Nobody even talks about it. It's supposed to be part of doing business. In fact, businessmen are constantly reviled instead of understanding the issues. Now, why does this happen? Look at the pendency of cases. As of 2025, early 2025, the Supreme Court alone had 82,000 pending cases. Millions of cases are languishing in high courts and district courts. Sheer volume is compounded by the severe shortage of judicial manpower. India has just 21 judges per million people, which is less than half of the Law Commission's recommendation of 50 per million. And even that 50 per million is half of what a country like the US has with a much lower population. This creates an impossible situation. One example, special court was set up in Mumbai for fast trial of cases related to the security scam of 92. 32 years later, it continues to work, meeting every day for those cases. What does it tell you? Still, the High Court level has to go to the Supreme Court. The judicial system also presents another concerning paradox. While we are worried about all this, all our courts at every level show remarkable alacrity in admitting matters of less public importance. If it is celebrities or it's someone being upset about something on the grounds of religion or a comic or things like that, they get admitted, heard, make front page news, 24-hour discussion on news channels. But things that matter, that will lead to progress and economic development, don't even come up for decades. Even the landmark bankruptcy legislation of 2016 was supposed to ensure quick corporate resolution and ensure that companies that have defaulted find new owners. It's just so mired in allegations of manipulation, corruption, collusion between debtors and creditors, fabricated debts, antedated loan agreements, and of course, the long delays in resolution, that the whole act is being overhauled in just less than 10 years. What a shame. The National Company Law Tribunal and its appellate body have found all this. It's not me saying it. They have repeatedly shown how applications attempt to sideline legitimate shareholders, evade liability, and these are the few cases that come to them. Most just slide under the radar. Add it all up, compliance overload, tax harassment, regulatory overreach, rampant corruption, judicial inefficiency, flawed bankruptcy enforcement, all of them come together and form this massive block to the dream of Viksit Bharat. It's not about going online. It is not about reducing GST. It's not about whether you have a vision or not. It's about these serious issues that have just grown and grown over the 79 years since we have become independent. India is not going to become a developed nation because ambitious rhetoric, even if it's amplified on order by industrialists or paid influencers. Simplified GST will lead to a loss of revenue. It will have to be offset and collected by us. Can be cut only if the government stops its extravagant spending and events. A reduced compliance burden and better processes will only happen if there's a war on corruption and we finally have judicial reforms. A case has to end in a year or two. But whether it's murders or civil issues, which are worse, we cannot drag things on until it becomes meaningless and people have forgotten the starting point. The journey from rhetoric to reality will require relentless focus on these fundamentals. Can you see any of it happening in a concrete time-bound plan? If you think so, I would love to hear from you. If not, please make people aware and share this video and subscribe. Thank you.